This was the day Marina decided to embrace life fully. Enough, she thought. I'm a woman, only 35, and I deserve happiness. She opened her computer to a travel agency's website, determined to relax and escape with her son for a week to some warm destination. Vibrant tour images flashed before her eyes. She struggled to choose, wanting it all at once. After scrolling through countless all-inclusive options in Turkey, Egypt, and other popular destinations for Russian tourists, Marina settled on a domestic resort in Sochi. She had frequently visited there during her student years, first with friends and later with her family, including her son Dania and husband Boris. Boris had entered Marina's life when she was just 25. Tall, wealthy, handsome, young, with a distinctive mole on his chin, she was instantly captivated and decided to tie her life to his. Initially, their life was like a cheap romance novel: travel, flowers, endless joy, and a child. But a year after Daniil's birth, things began to change. Boris started coming home late from work, often staying until midnight. His business trips turned into monthly adventures, usually to southern countries. Marina resolutely pushed away thoughts of infidelity, but Boris kept giving her reasons to doubt. Conversations led nowhere, as he denied everything. Despite this, Marina continued to love him. She pleaded with Boris to spend more time at home, at least for Dania's sake. But Boris showed little interest in his son, merely providing money and disappearing. One evening, he vanished again, this time for good. Almost every day, Marina mentally revisited that fateful evening. She replayed each moment in her mind and initially cried, but eventually, she had no more tears left. She barely held back her despair and sadness from Dania, who still believed his father was on a long business trip. The night before, Marina had resolved that this would be the last time she dwelled on this scenario. That February evening, Marina had been pacing around the apartment with her phone for the third day in a row. Boris had gone on a business trip to Siberia and was supposed to return 3 days ago. His phone was unreachable, and he wasn't responding to messages. "Mom, why are you so sad?" her 5-year-old son Dania asked. "I'm not sad. Why aren't you asleep yet?" The boy sighed, turned around, and went back to his bed. Dania had no idea something had happened to his father. Boris rarely communicated with him, and in the past 6 months, he hadn't even entered his son's room. So, his absence didn't change much in the boy's daily life. Marina called the firm where her husband worked as a managing partner. Boris had said they were opening a new production facility in Siberia, so he needed to go there. She managed to reach the company's general director. "Hello, Yuri Albertovich," she said nervously. She had met him at a few corporate events and was acquainted with him. "I want to know about my husband's business trip. Do you know how it's going? I can't reach Boris. He should have been home 3 days ago." "What business trip?" Yuri Albertovich asked, surprised. "Marina, what are you talking about? What do you mean?" The woman nearly dropped the phone. "Aren't you opening a new factory in Irkutsk?" "We don't have any factories in Irkutsk, and none are planned. Boris told me he was taking 2 weeks off," Yuri Albertovich explained. "On vacation." "Thank you," Marina whispered and hung up. She slowly sat down on the couch and covered her face with her hands. Boris's lies had reached an unprecedented level. If before he at least tried to cover his tracks, now he had simply decided not to return home, turning off his phone. She couldn't tolerate this any longer. Of course, she should have left earlier, at the first signs of infidelity. But for Dania's sake, Marina stayed with Boris. He could provide a comfortable life, education, and travel for their child. Leaving Boris would mean raising Dania alone while working, and she wasn't sure how long she could manage or how it would affect Dania. But that wasn't the only reason she stayed. She still loved Boris, despite his despicable behavior. "But now I need to be strong. Enough humiliation. Many women leave and successfully raise children alone, and Marina will definitely manage with Daniil." Her thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. Yuri Albertovich was calling back. "Marina, it's me again. Listen, I just got a call," he said quickly and uncertainly. Boris is indeed in Siberia. Not at a factory. The director hesitated. I think it's better not to discuss this over the phone. Can I come over? Marina agreed. She tidied up as best she could and waited for Yuri Albertovich. The firm's office was a 10-minute drive from her house, so he arrived soon. After greeting each other, they sat on the couch in silence for a moment. The director seemed at a loss for words. Marina, he began, sighing heavily. Boris went to Irkutsk to ride snowmobiles on the ice of Lake Baikal. He often goes there with friends. Marina was astonished by these revelations about her husband's personal life. But that's not the point now. After your call, a colleague came into my office with news from Irkutsk. There was a slight thaw, and snowmobiling was prohibited, but what? Tell me, Marina insisted. Boris decided to go on the ice anyway and fell through. He didn't make it. Marina paled. How could this happen? She whispered. Marina, are you all right? Should I call an ambulance? Yuri Albertovich asked worriedly. No, I'm fine. He's gone. The thing is, it didn't happen on the lake itself but on a nearby river with a strong undercurrent. They haven't found Boris's body yet, and the rescuers say there's no chance he's alive. Marina felt as if she had been struck. Just moments ago, she had been cursing Boris and was determined to leave him. Now she learned he was gone. She stared blankly, her mind flooded with memories of their life together. Yuri Albertovich went to the kitchen and brought her a glass of water. But I promise, he reassured her. The firm will help you with the inheritance and all legal matters. But how is that possible if they haven't found Boris? Marina asked. Sometimes people are declared dead even if their body isn't found. I understand your reluctance to accept this, but I was assured there was no chance of Boris being saved. I'm sorry. Marina was no longer listening. Tears streamed down her face. She couldn't imagine how to go on. After composing herself slightly, she saw Yuri Albertovich out and sat in the kitchen. Mom, why are you crying? Dania asked, entering the kitchen. I'm not crying. My eyes are just watering. Why aren't you asleep? I heard you talking to someone. That was a man from Dad's work. And Dad. Marina paused, unsure of what to say next. She didn't want to tell her 5-year-old son about his father's death or say he had gone to heaven. So, she decided to wait until Dania asked about his father again. Dad is on another trip, as usual. But this time, he'll be gone longer. What is he doing there? Dania asked curiously. He's exploring new worlds, investigating mountains, lakes, and seas. He's working and traveling. I want to explore new worlds too. When you grow up, you can explore whatever you want. But for now, you need to go to bed. You know that people grow the most while they sleep. So, the sooner you go to bed, the faster you'll grow. Come on, go to your room. The boy headed to the door but suddenly stopped and turned around. He asked a question he had never asked during all of Boris's trips. When will Dad come back? I don't know, Marina said, struggling to hold back her tears. It will be a very long time. He's on a difficult and lengthy journey, solving complex problems. You can't discover a new world in just a week, you know. Dania nodded and went to his room. For the first time in years, Marina was almost glad that Boris had barely paid attention to their son. She couldn't imagine how she would explain the situation to Dania if Boris had been an attentive and loving father. Now, there was a chance the boy would eventually forget his father and stop asking about him. Years later, when Daniil becomes a teenager, Marina will have to reveal the whole truth to him. But for now, her priority is to protect her son's mental well-being and avoid burdening him with distressing news. However, Marina herself is struggling. Boris's infidelities and secret life only deepened her grief over his death. Marina had always loved her husband, but now that love felt more intense. She found herself in an emotional trap. When she had decided to leave Boris, she could suppress her feelings with anger and resentment. Now, she couldn't be angry at someone who was no longer alive. His betrayal seemed to fade from her memory, replaced by happy moments from their past. Most of these joyful memories were from the early days of their relationship. Marina took out a family photo album and flipped through the pages, stopping at a picture of her and Boris on a snowmobile somewhere in the Caucasus. In those days, Boris took her on all his adventures, including snowmobile rides. He was an expert, could drive a snowmobile with his eyes closed, Marina recalled, wiping away tears. How could he have let this terrible accident happen? It's so unlike him. No, it's not like him. I need to wait until they find his body. I can't believe this. She closed the album, momentarily composing herself before feeling overwhelmed by grief again. Marina could only maintain her composure by thinking of her son's peace of mind. She wanted to run, call someone, scream, and demand that the search for her husband continue. She considered calling Yuri Albertovich again but stopped herself. What good would it do? She couldn't influence the search, and convincing anyone that Boris couldn't have died so foolishly because he was a skilled snowmobile driver seemed pointless. She took a deep breath and sat on the couch, her mind blank. She wanted to fall asleep and wake up to see her husband rushing off to work, disappearing for days as usual. Marina took some valerian drops and lay down. She tossed and turned, unable to sleep. She kept repeating to herself, "Hope and wait, hope and wait." She couldn't let go of Boris. She was ready to let him go from their family but couldn't accept his death. The valerian finally took effect, and Marina managed to fall asleep. With each passing day, the words, "Hope and wait," echoed less frequently in her mind. Boris was officially declared dead, though his body was never found. Yuri Albertovich kept his promise, helping with the inheritance, providing financial support, and arranging remote work for Marina. She managed to balance raising her child with earning a living. But letting go of Boris was impossible. 3 years of mourning followed. Marina denied herself rest and entertainment, smiling only when interacting with her son. He remained the sole purpose in her life. 3 years passed in this manner. On the website, a cheerful girl smiled, holding tickets in one hand and a sign reading, "Happy vacation for the whole family," in the other. Marina sighed and clicked, "Bye, Danya," she called out after purchasing the tickets. "We're going on vacation to Sochi in a week." For 7 days, she prepared for the trip with her son, both physically and mentally. She was embracing her new life, not as a grieving widow whose husband had deceived her and died in an accident, but as a woman living life to the fullest. Time flew quickly, and before she knew it, the week had passed. It was time to head to the airport. Upon arrival, Marina and Danya sat in the waiting area. The last time Marina was at the airport with Boris was 5 years ago, when they sent their son to his grandmother and took a week-long vacation in Turkey. Memories flooded back, but Marina pushed them aside. She took Danya's hand, and they joined the crowd heading to the departure gates. Near their gate, the crowd thinned, and they sat down. Marina observed her fellow passengers, mostly excited vacationers. A group of young people laughed at a video on their phones, while 2 elderly women read newspapers. Further away sat a couple, a blonde woman in her mid-20s and a man in a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses. The man's age was hard to determine as his face was obscured by the hat. He was engrossed in telling a story to the woman, who seemed disinterested, focused on her phone. Marina turned her attention to her own phone, not wanting to dwell on the couple's dynamics. 15 minutes later, the boarding announcement came. Marina and Danya found their seats, with Danya excitedly sitting by the window. "Danya, this is your first conscious flight," Marina said cheerfully. The last time they flew together, Danya was not even 2 years old. "This is so cool, Mom! I'm so glad we're flying together. You probably don't remember your last flight, do you?" Marina asked, immediately regretting the question. Danya paused, looking out the window. "No, I don't remember anything." Marina sighed in relief. She had worried that Danya might recall something related to his father. Over the past 3 years, the boy rarely mentioned his dad, only asking about his adventures in the early days. Marina made up stories about Boris's expeditions, saying his group was delayed by bad weather or meeting interesting people. As Danya grew older, his questions about his father became less frequent. In the past year and a half, he hadn't asked about Boris at all. But Marina still worried. She feared that Danya's classmates might say something about their fathers, prompting new questions. Fortunately, this hadn't happened yet, perhaps because Marina was acquainted with the mothers of Danya's friends, who understood her situation and asked their children not to discuss their fathers around Danya. Marina knew that in the coming years, she would need to have a serious conversation with her son. She even sought advice from a psychologist but hadn't found a suitable approach yet. "Mom, look, we're above the clouds!" Danya exclaimed in awe. Marina looked at her son and remembered their flight with Boris and Danya. The boy had sat quietly on Boris's lap, looking out the window, while other children cried. Marina had been overjoyed by the peaceful family scene, unaware that it would be their last flight together. Half a year later, she and Boris flew on vacation without Danya, hoping to rekindle their relationship. But the trip only highlighted their growing distance. After returning, their relationship rapidly deteriorated. Marina called a flight attendant and asked for water. She didn't want to dwell on memories of Boris, but her mind kept returning to the past. She felt guilty for breaking her resolve to start a new life. "But I have to keep trying," she told herself. She drank the water, closed her eyes, and attempted to sleep. "Mom, I need to use the bathroom," Danya said, waking her up. "Let me take you," Marina offered. "Mom, I'm old enough to find the bathroom on a plane. I'm 8 years old. Besides, the flight attendant showed me where it is. If I need help, I'll ask her." "You're so smart," Marina said, letting Danya pass. She watched him walk confidently to the front of the plane, where a flight attendant guided him to the restroom. Assured that Danya had reached his destination, Marina looked out the window. The plane had long since reached cruising altitude and was flying smoothly. But a moment later, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching an area of turbulence and may experience some shaking. Please remain calm. The situation is under control and will pass shortly." As soon as the captain finished speaking, the plane began to shake. "Danya, my boy," Marina thought, worried about her son. "He must be terrified." She stood up, intending to go to the restroom, but heard a woman's voice from behind. "Please take your seat, ma'am. We're experiencing turbulence, and safety regulations require." The flight attendant tried to guide Marina back to her seat, but Marina interrupted her. "My son is in the restroom. I need to check on him." "Don't worry, he'll be fine." At that moment, Danya emerged from the restroom. He calmly walked back to his row but suddenly stopped. After a brief pause, he hurried back to his seat, his face pale and frightened. "Mom!" he called out, his voice trembling. "Danya, what's wrong? Did the turbulence scare you?" "It's just a bit of shaking, nothing to worry about." Marina assumed the sudden jolt had frightened her son. "Mom!" Danya repeated, almost whispering. "Dad is sitting with some lady over there." Marina quickly ushered her son back to his seat. "Sweetheart, you must be mistaken. It's probably someone who looks like him." "No, I'm sure it was him. He just had a different hairstyle. Go see for yourself. You must be tired from the long flight. Let's recline your seats so you can rest." "You don't believe me?" Danya asked, hurt. "It's not that I don't believe you, but there are so many people in the world, and some of them look very similar. It's likely you saw someone who resembles Dad." "I know it was him," Danya insisted, folding his arms and staring out the window. Marina realized it was pointless to argue with her son, especially since she struggled to maintain her composure. She tried to convince herself that Boris couldn't possibly be on the plane. It must be a coincidence, perhaps triggered by memories of their past flight. She decided not to check for herself, fearing that seeing someone resembling Boris might unsettle her further. Marina remained seated for the rest of the flight, avoiding even glancing towards the aisle. After an hour and a half, the plane began its descent, and 20 minutes later, it landed safely. Passengers quickly gathered their belongings, even before the plane came to a complete stop. Marina preferred to wait until the crowd dispersed before leaving her seat. As she waited, a man from one of the front rows stood up to retrieve his luggage. Marina instantly recognized him as the person Dania had mistaken for his father. The man bore a striking resemblance to Boris, though his face was slightly fuller and his haircut shorter. As he reached for his hat, Marina noticed the familiar mole on his chin. "This can't be happening," she thought. "It must be a dream, a ridiculous coincidence. I can't believe this." She trembled, struggling to hide her emotions from her son. The man put on his wide-brimmed hat, took the blonde woman's hand, and joined the line of passengers exiting the plane. The hat concealed his face from Marina's view. Marina waited longer than usual to avoid encountering the man. As they exited the plane, she couldn't resist approaching an airline employee at the gate. "Excuse me, can you tell me if a certain person was on my flight? I'm sorry, but I'm preparing for another flight. But theoretically, you could access the passenger list, right? It's the same airline." "Theoretically, yes, but I can't violate privacy laws." Marina leaned in and whispered, "The man I'm asking about is my husband, who went missing years ago." The employee looked at Marina, then at Dania, and decided to help. She typed something on her screen and asked, "What's his full name?" "Boris Lvovich Krasnov. He wasn't on your flight." "I'm sorry, but please step aside and don't mention this to anyone." "Of course," Marina replied, confused. She took Dania's hand and slowly made her way to the baggage claim area. As she waited for their luggage, she spotted the man in the hat again. He had already collected his bags and was leaving with his companion. "Thank goodness it's not him," Marina thought. "I don't know what I would have done otherwise. What a strange coincidence." But the mole. She shook her head, determined to forget the incident and focus on their vacation. After retrieving their suitcase, Marina and Dania took a taxi to their hotel. Their room had a beautiful view of the sea. Marina stepped onto the balcony, took a deep breath, and mentally let go of the day's events. A new life awaited her, filled with days of relaxation, sun, and sea. "No random encounters will bother me again," she thought, lying down on the spacious bed. The first 3 days of their vacation were wonderful. The weather was perfect, and the beaches were never too crowded. The only disturbance was the occasional argument from neighboring rooms at night, but it didn't affect their sleep. Marina enjoyed standing on the balcony in the evenings, watching the sunset over the sea. It was her daily meditation. Calming her mind down on the 4th evening, Marina stepped onto the balcony as usual. The sky was cloudy, so there wouldn't be much of a sunset to enjoy. As she turned to go back inside, she heard voices from the balcony below. A couple was arguing loudly, and Marina recognized the man's voice. It was Boris. "Dasha, is there anything in life that interests you besides money?" the man asked. "Of course, but first you need to provide for me," the woman retorted. Marina listened intently, her heart racing. She had never heard Boris raise his voice like this before. Their arguments had always been quiet or silent. "Am I not providing for you?" the man continued. "Are you kidding me? You brought me to this dump in Sochi when I want to go to Cyprus, the Maldives, or Bali. This isn't a dump, it's a 4-star hotel. Your previous sugar daddies spoiled you with trips to the Maldives because they only wanted your body. Is that all you want? Of course not. I'm trying to teach you something, make you a bit smarter. You're such a bore, acting like an old man even though you're still young." "I'm a bore? Fine. But let me tell you something. You're not getting any younger either. Soon, what attracts rich men to you will fade. And what will be left?" Marina froze. The man's voice was unmistakably Boris's. She had never heard him speak so harshly, but his favorite phrase, "And what will be left?" confirmed her suspicions. The woman laughed loudly. "What? Do you hear yourself? I'll look better at 40 than all your past and future girlfriends combined." She stormed back into the room, slamming the door. The man stood on the balcony for a moment longer before following her inside. Marina was in shock. She needed to hear his voice again to be sure. "Danya, I have to run an errand. I'll be right back," she said, leaving the balcony. She hurried to the door, rushed down the stairs, and found the room directly below theirs. Disregarding all propriety, Marina pressed her ear against the door. What can female curiosity lead to? She wondered. The couple continued their argument. Aren't you afraid I'll just leave you now? The woman asked. Where will you go, Dasha? The man retorted. Anywhere. Do you think there aren't richer men in Sochi? I'll find someone better than you. You'll regret your words. But I don't care anymore. Go wherever you want. I don't give a damn about you or your men. You're just a pathetic old fool. You'll be the first to come crawling back, begging me to return. You can think whatever you want. No one will grovel for you. You think you're some princess? Goodbye then. The woman stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Marina barely had time to step back as the woman rushed past her, not noticing her presence. What am I doing? Marina thought, her heart racing. Standing against the wall, hiding from a couple I was eavesdropping on. How embarrassing! Yet, she knew her actions were justified. Such coincidences didn't happen. First the airplane, then the mole, and now the voice. Either she was going crazy, or her supposedly dead husband was alive and well in the next room. If it were just her imagination, she could dismiss it as a moment of confusion. But Dania had also recognized Boris. Children weren't easily fooled. If Dania said he saw something, he saw it. Marina decided to move to the window at the end of the corridor to catch her breath. But her respite was short-lived. The door opened, and the man stepped out. Marina quickly turned away, pretending to look out the window. In the reflection, she saw the man close the door with his keycard and head towards the elevator. When the elevator arrived, Marina rushed down the stairs, determined to follow him. They reached the first floor simultaneously. Marina watched as the man, dressed in a t-shirt and shorts, walked to the bar and ordered a cocktail. She followed him, pulling up her collar, tousling her hair, and putting on her sunglasses. Marina approached the bar and ordered a mojito, in a deeper voice than usual. She nursed her drink for a few minutes, observing as the man downed several shots of tequila mixed with cocktails. After about 10 minutes, the alcohol began to take effect. Miss, tell me something, the man said, turning to Marina. Why are women so complicated? Marina froze, realizing he was addressing her. Complicated? She asked, keeping her voice low. Yes, complicated, he replied. Maybe it just seems that way to you. Things are much simpler. Female solidarity. You don't even know my situation, yet you're taking her side. I can guess, Marina said, staring into her empty glass. She didn't dare turn to face him. And what do you think you've guessed? He asked. Obviously, you had a fight with your girlfriend. She might have even run away, insulted you. Now you're looking for support, someone to tell you that you're right and she's a foolish child who understands nothing. Marina used the information she had overheard, feeling a mix of guilt and satisfaction. You're very perceptive. I'm impressed. Female intuition is real. But I must disappoint you. Why is that? I'm not going to tell you that you're right and she's wrong. Maybe she is foolish, but you're not much better. You're quite bold, he remarked. I didn't mean to offend you, Marina said, realizing she had been too harsh. No, please explain what you mean. Marina sighed, knowing she had to reveal her true thoughts. You men aren't forced to choose young and foolish women. You leave the smart and mature ones, cheat on them, and then complain when all they want is your money. You claim it's hormones that make you choose the young ones. That sounds like a lame excuse. The ability to control our animal instincts is what separates us from animals. You're human, aren't you? Supposedly, Marina replied. The man ordered another shot and downed it quickly. Wow, I'm really drunk. Can I ask you another question? Go ahead. If you're so smart and know everything, tell me, what should I do now? I have no idea. Learn to control your hormones. Though I think your young companion will return to you tomorrow or the day after. What you do with her then is up to you. I'm not a psychologist. Maybe I should send her away? Maybe, Marina replied, unsure of the purpose of their conversation. She felt a strange attraction to Boris, preventing her from simply walking away, despite the risk of being discovered. Have we met before? The man asked, just as Marina thought about the possibility of being recognized. I don't think so. This is my first time here. Your voice sounds familiar, though. Maybe you're mistaking me for someone else? Marina decided it was time to leave. Well, good luck with your personal life. I must go. Will we see each other again? Possibly. Marina left the bar and called the elevator, her mind racing. She knew that Boris's intoxication had saved her from being recognized. There was no doubt in her mind now, this man was Boris. His intonations, gaze, voice, and mannerisms were unmistakable. She remembered how he looked when drunk, never causing trouble, just becoming more talkative. And his behavior with women hadn't changed. He was still flirting with her even after arguing with his companion. Now, Marina had to decide what to do next. Should she reveal herself to Boris? What would be the point? To look into his eyes and see the familiar deceit? She had seen enough of that during their years together. Yet, she couldn't help but wonder why he had done this. Did he want to start a new life with another family? If so, why not just leave her instead of making her suffer for 3 years? What a scoundrel he is! Marina thought as she entered her room. Her feelings towards Boris had shifted. Instead of the shock and fear she felt on the airplane, she now felt calm and determined. She no longer desired to confront him immediately. Her curiosity gnawed at her. Did anyone else from Boris's past know he was alive? What name was he using now? Marina considered her options. She could simply be glad he was alive and continue living her life, eventually telling Dania the truth when he was older. Or she could confront Boris, leading to a difficult conversation and potential heartache. The risk of rekindling her feelings for him was too great. She decided the first option was more sensible. She would focus on her own happiness and eventually find someone new to fill the void Boris had left. The next morning, Marina and her son prepared for the beach as usual. The weather had improved, and they needed to secure sun loungers quickly. This section of the Black Sea beach was exclusively for hotel guests, so there wasn't much competition for spots. Marina stood before the mirror, deciding what to wear. She opted for a different pair of sunglasses, much wider, and a large hat to shield her face. She wasn't just protecting herself from the sun, she was hiding from Boris, who lived right below her. Marina hadn't decided whether to confront Boris or not, so she maintained her disguise for now. She took Dania's hand, and they headed to the elevator. It took a few minutes to arrive, as everyone seemed eager to hit the beach. When the elevator finally came, it stopped on the floor below. The doors opened, revealing Boris's blonde companion, looking displeased. I had to wait forever for the elevator. People are so inconsiderate, she complained. Excuse me, but we all have to wait, Marina replied calmly. I don't care how long you waited, the woman snapped, eyeing Marina's outfit. You're dressed like a frump and talking to me? Marina remained unfazed, covering Dania's ears as they rode in silence. In the hotel lobby, the atmosphere was bustling. Marina's irritating elevator companion disappeared into the crowd, likely heading to meet Boris. As Marina suspected, the woman was indeed going to the beach, where Boris had secured loungers. Unfortunately, the only available loungers were near Boris and his companion. Marina had no choice but to take them, reassuring herself that her disguise would keep her safe. She settled in, applying sunscreen to Dania and herself. It wasn't long before the couple started arguing again. Why couldn't you find a spot closer to the sea? The woman complained. These were the closest available. If you want to be closer, you should wake up earlier instead of sleeping until 11, Boris retorted. Oh, really? And who was drinking until 2 a.m.? Not me. I couldn't sleep because I was waiting for you, she shot back. You left me yesterday, remember? How was I supposed to know you were back in the room 2 hours later? Boris replied. The argument escalated, with the woman accusing Boris of lying and mistreating her. Marina tried to tune them out, but their voices carried. When will you stop being so mean? Boris asked quietly. When you stop being like this? Look at yourself, the woman snapped. Marina glanced at Boris, noticing his pale face and shaky hands. He looked unwell, likely from his late-night drinking. Suddenly, Boris collapsed onto the lounger, unconscious. Boria! The woman screamed. Somebody help him! Marina rushed over, checking Boris's pulse and breathing. He was alive but weak. She instructed the woman to fetch a doctor from the hotel while she tried to revive Boris. She positioned him on his side and opened his airway, then grabbed a nearby beach umbrella to shade him. Within moments, Boris began to regain consciousness. He opened his eyes and saw Marina, without her glasses and hat. Marina. Is that you? He stammered. Yes, she replied, realizing she had forgotten her disguise. The woman returned with a doctor, who administered aid to Boris. Marina retreated to her lounger, watching as Boris was helped back to the hotel. The situation had become even more complicated. Boris knew she had seen him, but they hadn't had a chance to talk. Marina feared he might seek her out, but she had lost all desire to see him again. She worried about Dania's reaction and the potential disruption to their lives if Boris wanted to reconnect with his son. Back in her room, Marina's anxiety grew. She received a phone call but couldn't find her phone in her beach bag. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. It was Boris. He had found her room number by asking at the reception desk. Marina reluctantly agreed to meet him at the hotel bar that evening to talk. As she prepared for the meeting, Marina steeled herself, determined to be tough and critical of anything Boris said. She arrived at the bar early, choosing a quiet table in the back. Boris entered, spotting her after a moment. Hello, Marina, he said guiltily. We've already seen each other. She replied coldly. Have you ordered anything? He asked. No, and I'm not here to drink with you, she snapped. It might make this conversation easier. I'll be right back, Boris said, heading to the bar. Boris returned with 2 cocktails and placed them on the table. Have the doctors cleared you to drink already? I think you should wait after fainting. I got non-alcoholic once. Oh, and thank you for helping me today on the beach. If it weren't for you, I doubt she would have even thought to call a doctor. No problem. Why don't you take better care of your health? Drinking and then going out in the heat. You know, I've stopped paying attention to my well-being lately. I guess I need to be more careful. After all, I'm not 18 anymore. No, why bother? You've been dead for a long time, and a dead man doesn't need to worry about his health. Marina. Boris sighed heavily. Please, just listen to me without interrupting. Hear me out, I beg you. I'll try. 3 years ago, I started receiving threats. Our firm crossed paths with a very serious organization. It all began when I took out a loan for our new project. Not from a bank, of course. No bank would lend on those terms. So, I turned to this dubious organization. We signed a contract, and a large sum was transferred to our account. But the contractor we chose disappeared without fulfilling their obligations. They were last seen in Cyprus, but that's beside the point. I contacted the lending organization, explained the situation, but no one listened. They gave me a month to repay the debt. We went to the police, but they said they couldn't help because both the organization and the contractor were operating unofficially. Since then, I've been receiving calls and emails threatening me. I feared they would come to our house. They demanded the money back. How could I find such a large sum in a month? The threats became more frequent, and I decided to flee to Siberia. After a couple of weeks there, I was about to return when the security guard at the resort where I was staying informed me that a group of young, athletic men were asking about me. I realized they had found me. There was nowhere to run. They would have caught up with me at the airport, the train station, even at the resort. I was in a state of panic. It felt like my life was over. I remember running into a forest and somehow finding a signal to call our general director, Yuri Albertovich. I remember that conversation vividly. At first, he interrupted me and told me you had called, asking about me. I'm sorry, but I couldn't involve you. I told him everything, and that's when we came up with the plan to fake my death. We often went snowmobiling on Lake Baikal, so we used that as our cover story. I informed the colleagues I was with that they needed to report my death and handle the rescue team. Yuri Albertovich was supposed to spread the news throughout the firm and visit you. How could you? Marina whispered. I was saving my life, and not just mine. They could have used you to get to me. Boris took a sip of his cocktail and continued. Yuri Albertovich promised to help you. He did help. Well, at least there's that. At least? Do you think money and some inheritance could ease my suffering? I haven't lived for 3 years, do you understand? This is my first vacation since then. I'm sorry, but I had no choice, you must understand. You could have fled the country with us, hidden there. Those people would have found us even abroad. Besides, I was in such a situation that I couldn't have left the country in time. I was cornered. You could have told me about your problems earlier, not waited until it was critical. I didn't want to burden you. We had a small child, and you didn't need the extra worry. You remembered we had a child. How many times did you see him in the last year of your life? It pains me greatly. Over these 3 years, I've realized how much I miss my son. How do you manage it? Marina exclaimed. To come out of every situation unscathed, playing the victim, the weakling. I realized I wanted the best for you, didn't want to burden you. But if you miss your son so much, why didn't you let us know you were alive? I couldn't do it. The danger was still present. I couldn't risk being seen in the city. Phone calls? My phone could have been tapped. I couldn't even imagine how you would react to a call from beyond the grave. I hoped you would forget me quickly. Our relationship was far from ideal at that time. Whose fault was that, I wonder? I admit I was at fault, including for what happened to our relationship. What am I supposed to do about it? Throw myself at your feet in joy? Don't be sarcastic, I'm truly hurting. Fine, what happened next? Next came 2 years of constant running. I changed my last name. I lived in different cities but never found my place. It was a great relief when I heard that the financial organization I owed money to had been liquidated, and its leadership and enforcers arrested. I immediately returned to our city and, with the help of old connections, started a new business. The profit is modest, but it's enough to live on. Did you ever think of us, of Dania, after you returned? I did many times. But I was convinced you had forgotten me by then and didn't want to disrupt your life. I decided that the old Boris Krasnov no longer existed. Now there was a new Boris Belov, with a new business and a new personal life. You changed your last name from Krasnov to Belov? Yes, it seemed symbolic. Original. Marina laughed. I sometimes remembered your laughter. Stop it, I can't hear this. Don't play the suffering husband and father, he recalled. And when you started taking your endless vacations, leaving me alone with Dania, you remembered my laughter too. I said I was wrong. I was a complete idiot. Good that you admit it. But your regrets won't erase the years of pain I endured. I don't know why you even wanted to talk to me. First, I just wanted to explain myself. And second, I wanted to hear your forgiveness. So you thought you'd tell me your sad story about being threatened, having no choice, and I'd be moved and forgive your infidelities and betrayals? Boris had no answer. He looked into his empty glass and was about to get another drink. He started to get up but sat back down. You okay? Marina thought Boris was feeling unwell again. It's going to get loud. Please, ignore everything and don't listen to anything. Marina didn't understand Boris's words at first, but moments later, his current girlfriend, Dasha, approached the table. There you are, you jerk! I knew you'd run to the bar with other women! She shouted and slapped Boris. Dasha, you've got it all wrong. I've known the truth about you for a long time. You're not man enough to support me, and you run after other women. Dasha looked at Marina. And do you know she has a kid? I saw them in the elevator. She wants to use you, idiot. Dasha, stop it right now. No, let her continue, Marina interjected. You're a nasty piece of work, and now you're talking back to me? Dasha turned to Marina and tried to grab her hair. Boris quickly intervened, pulling Dasha back and making her sit next to him. Let me go! Let me go right now! Calm down! Boris shouted. She's not to blame. She's to blame for stealing other people's men. Dasha wasn't backing down. You're absolutely right. Marina continued to provoke her. That's exactly why I came to this bar. To steal your precious man, so faithful, devoted, and honest. You can't find men like that anymore. You've lost your happiness in an unequal battle with me. Marina, what are you doing? Boris tried to calm his ex-wife. Let me go, I'll tear out all her hair, Dasha screamed. Enough, Dasha, this is my ex-wife. The girl instantly calmed down. Ex-wife? The one you left many years ago? Yes, her, Boris admitted, trying to avoid eye contact. Left many years ago. Marina was intrigued by this phrasing. I'd say he disappeared. No, even better, drown. Boris didn't react to this. Of course, he hadn't told his new girlfriend about all his adventures. Wait, Dasha said in surprise. And that kid I saw her with, is he yours? He is. But you said you didn't have any children. I lied. Dasha fell silent for a moment, trying to process what she had heard. Don't worry, Marina said calmly. He has little to do with that child. Well, only biologically. The boy has almost forgotten his father. So you can consider that he didn't lie. Marina, Boris tried to justify himself. How could I not realize what a jerk you are? Dasha interrupted Boris. You left your wife, your child, and you'll leave me too. That's it, I can't see you anymore. Goodbye. Dasha jumped up and ran out of the bar. Boris chased after her. Marina was left alone with her half-finished cocktail. Could she have imagined a week ago that her first vacation in years would turn out like this? After such a trip, as they say, you need another vacation. So many events to process. But deep down, she was glad. First, that Boris was alive. Yes, he was a scoundrel, a liar, and a cheat, but he was alive. Second, Marina understood that the mournful period of her life was over. Now there would be new challenges. Daniel's stories about his father. But these were just everyday problems, not tragedies. At the very least, Marina's life would become much more interesting than before. So, she didn't pay attention to the screams, insults, and attempts to grab her hair from that agitated girl, because she understood that a new stage of life had begun, and the past would never return, even in memories. Marina stood up and slowly left the bar. She wanted to take a short walk in the fresh air. The courtyard of the hotel was deserted. Everyone was either in their rooms or in the bars and restaurants. Breathing in the warm Krasnodar air, Marina felt free. The shackles of mourning were broken. She walked into a small park and saw Boris sitting on a bench. Judging by your expression, you didn't catch up with her, Marina said, sitting down next to her ex-husband. I caught up with her, but I think she left me. For good this time. She's moving her things out of the room right now. Why did you even need this kindergarten? You two argued constantly. Every night I heard the details of your relationship. I don't know what kept you together. She's young, I'm not so much anymore. I wanted youthful energy, fun. Did you have fun? Don't even ask, Boris replied, waving his hand. Listen, I don't want to scold you anymore, especially since you know your own faults well enough. But tell me, don't you feel sorry for yourself? What do you mean? Well, look, you've been running away your whole life. Trying to chase money, ended up with threats to your life, had to fake your own death. Trying to chase happiness in your personal life. Ended up with this naive, loud girl. You're not that old, and you're already collapsing from hangovers. What was the point of all this? Where has it gotten you? You know, over the past few years, I've come close to asking myself that question several times. But each time, I ran away from it with banal excuses. Money? Well, you can never have enough. It gives freedom, security. Although, in my case, it turned out the opposite. Relationships? It's new energy, young blood. It gives you more vitality, joy. And here you missed the mark too. I don't know. I am completely lost. But you drove yourself into this state. You lost yourself, yes. But now you're feeling sorry for yourself the wrong way. You have destructive self-pity. It doesn't push you forward. Instead, it buries you deeper. Productive self-pity should sound like this. Yes, my mistakes led me to a difficult situation, but I am strong enough to reevaluate my principles and try to rebuild everything. Something like that. Marina didn't notice how her anger towards Boris had disappeared. She saw a weak, insecure man who was completely harmless. She even wanted to help him somehow. For a moment, Marina feared that this was a sign of rekindled feelings, which was exactly what she had feared when she first saw her ex-husband. But no, pity and love are completely different things, although sometimes it's hard to tell them apart, and what Marina felt was pity. Marina, thank you. For what? At one point in our conversation in the bar, I thought you were going to slap me, turn around, and run away. Thank you for not doing that. I really thought about it. Marina laughed, but curiosity got the better of her. Listen, how were you not afraid to return to the city? You had so many acquaintances, friends there. Dania and I could have seen you. I lived not in the city itself, but nearby, in a cottage settlement. I didn't go to the city center, worked mostly remotely. I only went to the city by car. And I radically changed my image and last name. It seemed like enough. And indeed, until I met you, the conspiracy was successful. Even during our first encounter, the conspiracy went smoothly. Marina remembered how she first saw Boris at the airport, but his wide-brimmed hat prevented her from recognizing her ex-husband. If it weren't for Dania, maybe we wouldn't be sitting here. He recognized me? Yes, I didn't expect it. I hoped he had forgotten everything. Boris sighed heavily. Marina, I want to meet him. Why? I understand that I can never be a full-fledged father to him. But I really want to see him. You said yourself that I can rebuild everything. Give me this chance, please. Marina didn't know what to say to Boris. Perhaps now, while Dania was still young and hadn't reached adolescence, was the best time to reintroduce his father into his life. But Marina was afraid to take such decisive steps. She was used to raising Dania alone. I don't know, this meeting could be very difficult for him. I understand everything. I will try to be as polite as possible. Okay, but let's do it this way. In the morning, I will prepare him, warn him about you. Then we will meet, talk a little. After the meeting, I will talk to him alone again. And only if he wants to see you again will we decide what to do next. Of course. Then tomorrow at 11 in the hotel cafe? Yes, but remember, for Dania, you are a traveler, exploring new lands. Interesting idea. Okay, I understand. Marina said goodbye and went back to her room. She tossed and turned all night, unable to sleep. She couldn't imagine how the next day's meeting would go. How would Dania react? How would Boris behave? Too many unpredictable factors. Or maybe her son wouldn't want to see his father again? With these thoughts, Marina lay awake until the alarm went off. She had set it for 10 o'clock to have time to get ready and explain everything to Dania. Mom, are we going somewhere today? The boy asked, watching his mother put on makeup. Yes. Marina turned to Dania. Remember the passenger on the plane who you thought was your dad? Yes. Well, you were right. It turned out to be your dad. Imagine, he returned from his journey right here to Sochi. I told you, the boy rejoiced. And we're going to see him today, right? Yes, he will be very happy to see you. And I will be happy to see him. Marina was glad to see her son's reaction. He was interested in his father, which meant that psychologically, this meeting should not be as difficult for Dania as it could have been. Where has he been all this time? The boy asked. He will tell you himself. When it was almost 11 o'clock, Marina and her son left the room. She was getting more and more nervous. Maybe it's not too late to cancel the meeting? Let things stay as they were. But there was no turning back. Marina had already told Dania everything, and canceling the meeting now could cause the very psychological trauma she was so worried about. Marina and her son made their way to the cafe, which was located on the first floor of the hotel. Boris was already sitting inside. Seeing his ex-wife and son, he stood up and walked towards them. "Dad!" Dania exclaimed, running towards Boris. "Hi! Hi, my boy," Boris said, hugging his son. Marina greeted her ex-husband, and they all sat down at the table. "So, how have you been?" Boris asked his son. "We're having a great time. This trip is so cool. Mom and I are on our first big adventure. You guys are awesome. I thought about you all the time." The boy continued to share his impressions. Marina looked at him in surprise. "Really? And I thought about you. Really? But I saw that Mom wasn't very happy when I started asking about you. I think it's because she was very worried about you. So, I try not to talk about you in front of her. I just thought about you. And where have you been all this time?" "Me? Well, Mom probably told you something." Boris was barely holding back tears. "I was far away and couldn't come to see you. That's the kind of work I have, you see? Traveling to different cities, villages, forests, lakes, exploring dangerous territories. This job requires constant presence. And we, travelers, see our families very rarely. Why don't you quit this job so Mom and I can see you more often?" "Well, someone has to do it. Then let those who have no one to return to do it." Boris realized he couldn't hold back his emotions any longer. He pretended to receive an urgent phone call and rushed to the restroom. Yes, sometimes even men need to let their feelings out. "See, Danny, your dad's job is very demanding," Marina said, left alone with her son. "Even on vacation, they keep calling and distracting him. Why does he need such a job?" the boy complained. "Everyone has their own calling." A few minutes later, Boris returned. "I'm sorry I had to step away. We were just talking about your demanding job that keeps you from seeing your son." Marina steered the conversation towards Boris's future involvement in Danny's upbringing. "Yes, about work." Boris hesitated slightly. "You know, Danny, I quit that job. Just now, over the phone." "Really? Hooray! Does this mean we'll see each other more often?" the boy asked excitedly. "Yes, we will definitely see each other more often." Boris looked at Marina. "If Mom doesn't mind, of course." "Mom, do you mind?" Danny asked, surprised. "Not at all. Of course, I don't mind. But how often you see each other will depend largely on your dad. I promise we'll see each other as often as possible," Boris firmly told his son. "But why can't you just live with us again, like before?" Boris didn't know what to say to Danny. He looked at his ex-wife helplessly. Marina tried to navigate the tricky situation. "Because Dad will need to start a new life, find a new job. He won't have time to be with us constantly. But once he finds a job, he will, right?" Danny put Marina and Boris in an even more awkward position. "Who knows what will happen then? We'll see." Marina evaded the answer. Boris, Marina, and Danny sat at the table for a long time, chatting. They discussed vacations, the sea, travels, shared stories about their lives, and made plans for the future. The day didn't end with breakfast at the cafe. They all went to the beach together. Boris even started teaching his son how to swim. They seemed to understand each other perfectly. Even with his mom, Danny never showed such enthusiasm for learning. Marina watched all this and remembered the times when she and Boris were just starting their relationship, and when Danny was born. It was a pleasant nostalgia, but Marina quickly regained her composure. She couldn't just forget Boris's actions, his betrayals. It was great that he managed to connect with his son, but she needed to keep her distance to avoid repeating past mistakes, even though Boris had changed significantly over time. Later in the evening, the three of them went for a walk around the city. From a distance, Marina, Boris, and Danny looked like a happy family. As it got dark, they headed back to the hotel, After saying goodbye at the elevator, Marina and Danny went to their room. Did you enjoy spending time with your dad? Marina asked. Yes, very much. I wish we could do this every day, all together. We can't do it every day. Tomorrow we have to fly back home. What? Tomorrow already? Yes. Marina had almost forgotten about the end of their vacation amidst all the excitement with Boris. That's too bad. Will we fly back together with Dad? No, he will fly later. Next time we'll meet him back in our city. Do I have to wait again? Don't worry, this time you won't have to wait as long. Marina reassured him. Mom, why can't you just live together again like before? I told you that's life. Sometimes we have to choose things we don't like. Your dad had to make such a choice, but things will change. We'll travel more often, see your dad more. Would you like that? Okay, the boy said, yawning, and went to bed. Marina also went to bed soon, but a few minutes later, the phone rang. Marina quietly stepped out onto the balcony and closed the door tightly so as not to wake her son. Hello, Marina? It's me. Boris's voice came through the phone. Yes, it's me. You still have my number? As you can see. So, how's Danny? Did you talk to him? Yes, I did. He's happy. That's great. So, shall we repeat the walk tomorrow? No, we're flying back tomorrow. I almost forgot about it myself. Good thing my phone reminded me. Oh, so soon. I'm flying out in 3 days. There won't be any chance to meet tomorrow. Maybe briefly in the morning. Just the two of us. I told Danny we'll see each other after we get back. Why did you rush it? He's had enough excitement for today. I think it's better to take things slowly. You're probably right. Where should we meet? Let's meet in the courtyard garden of the hotel. Okay. Good night and see you tomorrow. This time, Marina fell asleep quickly, despite the upcoming conversation with her ex-husband. The previous sleepless night and the eventful day had taken their toll. Mom, where are you going? Danny asked sleepily, seeing his mom getting ready to leave again. I have some things to do, go back to sleep. Marina quickly left the room, took the elevator down to the lobby, and went out to the courtyard. Boris wasn't there yet. Why did I come out so early? Marina thought. I should have been late. More anxious minutes for myself. But she didn't have to wait long. Soon, Boris entered the garden in a light suit and his signature wide-brimmed hat. Hi. Have you been waiting long? No, just a couple of minutes. Listen, since we're going to have another break, not as long this time, just a few days, I wanted to ask you something. Have you really forgiven me? Yes, I have, Marina calmly replied. I rarely hold grudges for long. And what's there to be angry about? Your weakness? Weakness isn't a crime. So you can live in peace. I don't hold any grudges against you. You're a very wise woman. I couldn't fall asleep for a long time, thinking about Danny and you. Remember, he asked why we can't start living together again? I remember. He asked me the same question again last night. Maybe he's right? If you've forgiven me, if we manage to get along so well, why not start over? What do you think? Are you willing to give it a try? No, Marina said after a pause. It was so hard for her to say that word. The possibility of reliving past happiness was tempting. Marina's feelings for Boris resurfaced, but she held herself back. She remembered the warning she had given herself on the beach, not to make the same mistakes again. Saying yes too quickly could lead to the same pitfalls. Everything had happened too fast and unexpectedly. In reality, she had only known the new Boris for a few days. That wasn't enough to start a serious relationship and live together. The forgiveness she had granted Boris didn't mean they could restart their relationship. Forgiving is one thing, but preventing new hurt is another. Boris didn't argue with Marina's refusal. He shook his head and said, I understand your answer. In your place, I wouldn't have forgiven myself, but thank you for doing so. The important thing is that my refusal doesn't affect Danny having his father back. Don't worry about that. I'll come see you as soon as I get back. Please let me know when you arrive, and then stay in touch. Okay. You take care of yourself too. This time, I won't disappear. Marina needed to return to her room and get ready for the airport. Both she and Boris wanted to hug goodbye but didn't. Perhaps by saying no, Marina had made the toughest decision of her life. She had always been a people pleaser since childhood. But this time, by overcoming her feelings, Marina proved to herself that she was strong and independent. As she turned to leave, she heard Boris call out to her. Wait! Is there something else? Yes, please tell me. Is your refusal final? Or do I still have a chance? We'll see, Marina replied and quickly walked back to the hotel. As she stepped into the elevator, tears welled up in her eyes. They weren't tears of sadness from saying goodbye to Boris, as they would see each other again in just a few days. They were tears of joy. Joy from new experiences, new chapters in life. During this vacation, Marina had learned to approach life differently, manage her emotions, find a father for her child, and yet not rush into a naive relationship with Boris. Only a wise woman could maintain such balance. And that's exactly who Marina had become during these warm summer days.